How do you find the will to fight back against a world that wants to keep you sedated, average, and stuck in place? Join us for the tools and strategies you need to create a life of abundance, discipline, and high achievement. This is the Tactical Empire with Jeff Smith.
Welcome to another episode of the Tactical Empire. Today I'm joined by Shawn Ryder. How are you, my man?
I'm good. I'm looking forward to being in Florida near where you are next week. Hopefully I can leave with the same tan that you're strutting on this episode with. You are getting dark, my friend.
Hey, man, I'm running 3 times a week minimum. So I'm outside in the sun every day, and the sun is finally shining in Florida. So it's good. It's good.
Yes. The whole country's been swept by the cold a couple weeks back. So it is nice up here. I think it is in the 50s today. The sun is out. The wind's not blowing. So I was walking around in shorts and a t-shirt this morning.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah. But we're going to be down there. Hopefully you and I can connect while we're down there. I think we're going to try and do Sunday or Wednesday. Just hit me up and we'll be ready to rock. So I'm ready to come down. Been good.
Sure.
It's pretty cool to be able to take a family vacation in February because not very many people travel that time of year. And I think we always pick, especially when we go to Disney, we pick like the slowest week of the year. So it's nice. You know, that freedom that we talk about has its perks that some people may not think about.
Yeah, you get spoiled on it, dude. We don't do anything on the weekends ever because we avoid crowds. We go during the weekdays everywhere we go, and yeah, it's a whole different ball game when you can just show up on a regular Tuesday afternoon anytime while the rest of the world's in school and everything else. So it's got its perks.
Now I am going to knock on wood because I had to I had to prepare my kids. I said, look, we got a whole week of you guys being in school. So whoever's sick in your class, avoid them because I don't need you coming down with the fever on Saturday when we're flying out on Sunday.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right, brother.
It's a big one.
We have had some conversations recently. We talk a lot about real estate, but some of the guys in the group, we brought this up on another episode of they're narrowing down their real estate strategy. And in particular, we had one guy in the group who decided to leave his W-2 corporate America job and go all in on his real estate portfolio. And his goal is to create a large portfolio, long-term rentals, but leaving the W-2 and he had a really nice salary, he needed like immediate cash flow to offset that income loss. And it takes time to build a portfolio to cash flow and offset that income. So you told him about the strategy where it's like, hey, buy 3 properties at once, improve them, hold 2, flip 1. Well, I loved the thought of that. If you could do that, every 3 to 6 months with a handful of properties, pretty good deal if the numbers work out. But then I started thinking about the situation that me and my wife are in with my wife leaving corporate America. We're building a business. We have our real estate portfolio, which is mainly long-term holds. We're building up the LTR burrs. And it was like, you know what? There's other guys in the group that have experience with flipping. So now I'm involved in some conversations with some of the guys regarding flipping. So today's episode, maybe the next episode or two, we're going to dive into particular areas of flipping. And the more I thought about it coming into this episode, it's what you're doing with the storage unit deal. So even though it's not a single family residence, like you guys had originally pitched that as, hey, we need lenders. We're going to refi out and hold it. And then the longer you went into it, you guys were like, hey, we're going to sell it once it's ready. So I was like, oh shit, Jeff's actually doing a flip. So let's start macro level here. What is your opinion on just the flipping business as in general? And then how do you see it best utilized with the particular men that we work with?
I love flipping, I guess. I would say I don't like it as a end all be all business because I kind of liken it to wholesaling is a whole different ball game, but both of them are very active endeavors that involve a lot of active work to generate the cash flow. and the cash flow is nice and it's beautiful, but you can get lulled to sleep and spoiled by that. So like everybody that I coach and talk to about wholesaling and flipping, I say the exact same thing to is like, you can't fall in love with that cash flow and not think long term with it, because you have to be funneling and sweeping part of it into like a long term play, because all you're doing is getting on the hamster wheel of an actual job doing flipping. And if you get to a point where you're doing one or two flips a month for 20 or 40K, and you're good at it, you can easily get used to 20 or 40K a month. And then your wife gets used to it. Your family gets used to it. Your house payment gets used to it. A couple cars later, you get used to it. And then you look up and you're like, I've flipped 1,000 houses and I don't own any houses. And that's
yeah.
That's what wholesalers get in they get sucked into that allure as well. It's kind of like it's just a dopamine hit of a big check, and it feels nice. And then you're like, okay. And I know wholesalers that have made 7 figures annually that still aren't buying property. And to me, that's like a bad move. Like if you were used to not making any money, then when it increases by 10x, you should just continue to be used to not making any fucking money and plow it all into long-term investments. And so flipping is the same way from that perspective. Like you just have to be careful of the allure of the sexiness of it. Because you will, I mean, sometimes you're probably going to learn your lesson and pay a little bit of tuition, and you may not fucking make any money on a flip. You might work on it for 4 months, and you might lose 10 grand at the end of the day. And so you have to understand that is going to happen from time to time. But there's other ones, like the most dangerous ones are when they come out of the gate and they don't know shit, and then they make 150 on their first one in 3 months, and then it's like, whoa, because they're like, this is real money. I just made 50K a month if you amortize it over the 3-month period, right? And then they're like, this is the greatest thing ever. And they really haven't gained any of the skills or got their teeth kicked in enough to understand the longevity of what's going on. So the gentleman that you're talking about in the inner circle, I kind of recommend that he go on a model of like buy 2, like you said, buy 3, hold 2, and then flip the one with the highest value, with the highest equity capture that you could make. And because burring is no different. Like I've burred countless properties, and it's the exact same concept, except I don't sell it at the end. So all we're doing is a value add project. There's value add plays, and then there's yield plays. A yield play is where you come in with a significant amount of capital and you buy it at a low cap rate, 6% or something like that. And you're buying like forever cash flow. It's very safe. It's a stabilized property. It's at 90% occupancy. It's class A, B type asset classes. You don't have to do anything. You just set it and forget it. You go in and you pay top dollar for it, but it kicks you off exactly what you anticipated. A value add play is where you can go into these things and force appreciation upon them. And so you can force appreciation in a lot of different ways. I mean, it depends on the asset class, but mostly it's capital improvements that you're doing and making the property more valuable or raising the rents. In the case of the storage facility, we went in as a value add facility and worked on that for the last 7-8 months. And we've forced so much appreciation into the deal that it doesn't make any sense to hold it anymore. And that's why the change of heart, the value went up so exponentially that it would not behoove us to not take our equity out now and roll it into the next deals. And so like, that's what you kind of have to evaluate. So in his case, the gentleman's case, he's looking to live, right? He's going from a 6-figure salary to like pulling the rug on that 6-figure salary. And now he's trying to live. And so we kind of just discussed it. He had the ability to go in and get a few houses. I talked to him about when I came out of the corporate world in 17 or 18, I had like a couple $100,000 to spend, and I spent it all on a handful of houses. Six, I think. I think I bought 6 or 7, and I was out of money. Long-term rentals, and I was out of money. And so like that was a huge learning opportunity for me, because like that did not kick off the amount of cash flow. Like, I mean, it's fine now. I'm like, well, it's a great move now, but in the interim, it's like, shit, I could have used 12 grand a month off of that money or something like that with a higher rate of return than sitting in a long-term rental, parking a bunch of my actual cash into the down payments on those properties, and then just turning them on to kick off a couple $100 a month, not a couple $100,000, a couple $100. And so I kind of taught him and stewarded him through that. If I would have had somebody coach me through that process at that point in time, I would have been far better off. Now, my wife doesn't like flipping and stuff like that, but I mean, it is essentially exactly what I do. So like it's just not selling it at the end to try to recoup that equity instantly. Like, I'm in the game for the long term with the stuff that we're doing, for the most part. But I have had a little bit of a strategy shift in the last year, which has led me to more of these conversations about flipping and the opportunity to like capitalize on equity today and roll it up. Now, there's a lot of rules to flipping. If you flip more than 3 houses in a year, you are now a real estate professional, and you pay earned income on that. It might be 3 or 4. I can't remember what the number is. It's something low, 3 or 4 houses. If you flip that many, you are now a real estate professional, not in the sense that we kind of try to be as investors, but you are actively a home flipper. Meaning, like, if you guys go make 500,000 in net in a year and you flip more than 3 or 4 of them, you're going to pay an earned income rate on that, like a W-2 rate. So that will erode your profits significantly. So you just need to be aware of that. But everybody that's out there in the real estate game, first of all, we should figure out that threshold. I can ask Chat GPT or whatever, but I think it's 3. It may be 4, but I'll clarify. But you should flip up to the limit every year. And so that's something I'm going to be putting into practice, because if you can stay below the threshold, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's interesting that you brought that up, because that's where my mind was going on. How is flipping taxed? So I'm assuming below that threshold is short-term capital gains. You're just buying an asset.
Yes.
And then turn it.
Correct.
So short-term capital gains is what, 15% or 25% right now? What is it?
I think it's 25. I would guess it's probably going down in the next year.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Yeah, that'd be nice. So yeah, let's
get. But I think it's 25.
Let's get that answer on the threshold. So if you keep it under 3 or 4, we'll get that actual answer here. So that was my next question, was the tax implications. So it does change based on the volume that you're doing.
Yep.
But then 2 other questions based on what you said. Why doesn't your wife like the flipping? Anything in particular there?
I think she just views it as too risky. Like, it's riskier than the other stuff that we do. I don't know why. She just generally has an aversion to new stuff, and she treads lightly when I start doing new things. As far as like, which I mean is fair. I talk openly about losing a couple $100,000 over the last few years trying to fucking do other shit that's not in my wheelhouse. And so, like, dude, I've done like 15 mil doing what I know how to do. And so, like, she's not wrong. And so she just makes me prove my case a little bit more thoroughly. And it's 1 to 3 houses a year and remain an investor. So you can flip 3 houses a year.
Once you hit 4, then it's going to be ordinary income tax. Nice. Okay, so if you want to be consistent and pay less taxes, then you keep it under 4, but once you hit 4, then you might as well go for volume because you're going to be taking off a bigger chunk. It's interesting how people think because I always view getting the money back into my system as safer. So I, full transparency, haven't ever truly done a flip actively, right? I'm an
Mhm.
investor in the storage unit deal, so I guess you could say I'm a lender in a flip.
Yep.
But so I haven't eaten shit, so to speak, on losing money on a flip. But I could view putting money in and selling a property and getting the money back in my possession is I'm getting in and out of the game. And so I feel like in my mind, the way my brain works, it feels safer to me because then I get to dictate when I start again. But when you own properties, there's so many unknowns and unknowables that any day you could wake up. And I learned this with my Airbnbs. And,
Yeah.
you wake up and there's a hurricane in the fucking mountains and you lose a retaining wall. Or you wake up and the guest at another property says that your house smells like shit. And it's like, does it or does it not? I don't know if I trust a guest that lives in the city and this is a property in the woods and they don't know what the bottom of a propane tank smells like. It's lessons that I've learned, right? Like, so I think there's risk with all of them, but it's interesting. I like getting the money back in my system. So it'll be real interesting to see as I potentially enter into a true flipping partnership,
Hmm.
how my mind either supports that thesis or does not support that thesis. Um,
Well, the thing that you have to really focus on, and this might be why my wife has a little bit of reservation on it. There's uncontrollable things that go on. Like if I buy a house and we're gonna burr it, like I know what I'm getting into. I know how much equity capture I can get on the front end. If I'm gonna hold it, there's a lot less risk. Okay, because uh, real estate is a lot of your mistakes are correctable with time. So if you're going into a property and maybe you underwrite it a little bit incorrectly and it doesn't pan out the way you want it to, slightly, not crazy. I'm not talking like we're off by multiple six figures or something. I'm talking about like, okay, I thought I was going to get out of this with zero out of pocket and I got to bring $5,000 to closing on the second close, something like that. Um, you can correct that and make up for it because like I'm not selling this house for 7 years. So like it doesn't really matter. Like I'm not doing anything with it. We're just going to rent it. I know what it cash flows. I didn't mess that up. And so like if you just hold it, it will make up for your mistake a lot of times. Now, if you're trying to flip it, there's a lot more economic factors at play because now you're talking about buying this house in January and you're estimating a market for May, June, July ish, depending on your rehab. Like, especially if you're going into like luxury rehabs, some of those are like 10 months, 12-month turnarounds. Like, think about projecting the macroeconomic climate of America 12 fucking months from now, right now. Like
right.
that's what you're doing as a flipper because you're trying to bet on the dollar cost averaging of all the projects you've got going on to like, I can unload this in March. I can unload this one in April. I can unload this one in June. And like, that's if you've got them stacked up. If you're taking one, you're putting all your eggs in that basket that you're going to be able to sell it for this amount of money, it, regardless of economic climate come September. And so like there is, and then you have to estimate your carrying costs because your carrying costs are a daily breakdown of what it costs you to hold that thing, right? And so one of these in Houston that we deal with constantly is like, how does it play during hurricane season? So like I buy a house and it may cost me $75 a day in carrying costs. Okay. That erodes your profit constantly. Every single day that ticks by, Saturday, Sunday, weekends, it doesn't slow down. That's a freight train of profit erosion. Okay. Now say I'm flipping that house in Houston, Texas in June or July, and we get hit with a hurricane that now costs me 2 more months of lag time. So we may increase material costs because we may have had some damage, incurred some damage, lost some work, lost some productivity. We may increase labor costs. I don't know. And then certainly we're going to increase carrying costs because it's not even ready for the market for 6 more weeks or whatever, right? And so like you areas of the country have things like that go on too. And so like that's all part of your process that you want to understand. Because if you go in with thin margins and you're like, I think we can do this and I think we can make whatever, 15 grand, it's probably not even worth it to do the whole job because you're going to work for 4 months with the prospect of making 15 grand, which you're probably miscalculating on your first ones, right? So like you coming in and partnering up with someone is super smart. If they've done it already, they know the area, they understand that type of thing. But you do have to understand any area that you show up as the investor in this project, there's just different risks associated with it. Where some flippers will, they'll just end up holding it. I mean, like sometimes, I mean, when was it? A year ago, 18 months ago, whatever it was, August or September of whatever, 23, when the fucking banks went wild and like commercial completely contracted and like there was no more lending happening and everyone was stuck in all these deals. Then the flipper goes and they put a tenant in there and rent it long term until the market can come back. And we're still kind of sitting in that kind of impasse of time. There's a house next door to my in-laws that's been on for sale for I think like 3 years, just sitting vacant as a flip. I'm like, I can't believe they paid taxes 3 times on that thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, there's just a lot of different carrying costs you have to account for and understand that speed matters. Speed matters incredibly, an incredible amount when it comes to flipping.
What are you can keep this answer short. What are you saying are carrying costs in a flip? The taxes that are accruing, the potential private money you used. What other are we looking at with carrying costs?
It's really just whatever note you have on it. I mean,
Okay.
you're going to pay, you are on the hook for taxes. You're going to be on the hook for any utilities as well. So you could just round those out though to say like, hey, a normal utility bill while this thing's turned on is going to be $100 for power or whatever,
Yeah.
because they're not sleeping there. They don't need to keep it like comfortable necessarily.
Yeah.
But you have to understand, you have to turn all your utilities on. You got to, I mean, like if you're in the summer and you got to run the air conditioner to dry the paint. So like everything's got to be on. You think of it as like zero cost, but there's
Yeah.
cost to every little tiny thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I mean, utilities, I would just throw a little line item in there and say it's going to be whatever, $100 a month or something like that, and break that down into $3 a day, and then you're servicing the debt, and that is whatever it is, $35 a day, $45 a day, it's something like that, and then um, just that's really what it is. And then the taxes at the end, you pay your portion of what you owned it for that year.
Would it be common sense and standard procedure for people to underwrite these deals as long-term rentals as well, just so they understand the implications if something happens macroeconomically or even locally to where they can't sell it, where they'll just refi out of it if they need
Yeah,
money and
yeah,
they can recoup what they put in and go and buy the next property and just not hold the property vacant for an extended period of time. That would be a normal thing for someone to do.
sure. A lot of flipping calculators have like 2 pages where the same data goes in and you just change the variables on that shit type of thing. I mean, sometimes, I mean, people don't account for it, but it's a simple deal. I mean, you can just say, hey, what's the rent in this area? Like, what's our backstop or our like pivot? I mean, because there's a certain threshold where you have to sell it. You really want to sell it because like let's say you're reducing price and you're running timeline and like you're 4 months overdue and you're $20,000 below your number. Like at that point, you're going to have to come out of pocket at the closing table. So at some point, there's like this break even where like, fuck no, I'm not issuing a check that large for this loss. And like you have to pull that ripcord before you get to that point. Otherwise, you're shit out of luck. You have no choices.
What do you mean by pull a ripcord? What action are you talking about taking in that instance?
Well, I would say you've either got to immediately make a sale for a price that's bottom dollar for what you're willing to do. Take it to a wholesaler, maybe. I don't know. Like if you say I have to get 190,000 out of this deal because that's going to leave me bringing 10 grand to the closing table, and so we have to get out of here at $10,000 loss or whatever. Um, like you would do that because that would be fast. Like they could sell it in 10 days, so your carrying costs would stop running. You could rent it if that's an alternative option that you guys feel like might be palatable. You've still got to go ahead and refinance that probably once you get a renter in there. And then what's that look like? What's the monthly nut on that? Who's carrying the debt? I mean, obviously the LLC can carry the debt, but it's just, it changes the dynamic of what you're doing at that point. But at some point you need to make the decision and have open and honest communication that like, here's the check-in points. Like if this thing runs beyond 90 days, it's a fucking dog at this point, and I don't want to write a check for 50 grand to get out of it.
Yeah.
Because then you've got nothing. So like, I mean, there needs to be some sort of time horizon. Like at day 45, we need to call a wholesaler and see what the top dollar is. We can get rid of this thing, and then have it gone by day 55. And like, I think those are very valid conversations. Kind of like I talk about partnerships a lot. You want to talk about like, what's the worst case scenario? Like, what's a divorce look like? Because you really want to understand that. Not that when you're in a flip that it's a cause for contention at all. It's just like everybody needs to be very level headed and making clear decisions quickly, because like this decision delays and time matters. Like and that's what it is. So I mean, it's just everybody needs to be super mature in the room and be like, well, we fucked this one up. Let's get on to the next one. Figure out how to get out from under this one and get on to the next one. I mean, like there's no point in fighting about it and like creating animosity. It is what it is. Like if it's a clean miss, I mean, and nobody's lying to anybody or no weird shit like that. You just gotta be adults and say, let's get out of this thing as unscathed as we possibly can and move on to the next one. And hopefully it'll be a home run, right?
All right. Jeff, that was valuable information. I have more questions, but we're going to save that for the next episode. Create a little mini series here on flipping for the people. So go ahead and send those people out.
Guys, we just did our 200th episode of this podcast. If anyone would find value in what we're saying, please send it to them so we can get more people listening here. We also have over 400, 500 videos on YouTube. Like and subscribe out there. If you have questions for Shawn and I, just send us a message on Instagram. We're happy to hook up and have discussions with you. We schedule calls with people periodically, just out of the goodness of our own heart to help you guys win and make some money. And it's a big year ahead of us, so I want everybody out there winning. Have a great week. Talk to you soon.